Finally tonight, a preview of a documentary on children in crisis produced by our colleagues at Milwaukee PBS in collaboration with the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. The documentary follows 4 young people from Wisconsin navigating mental health challenges. They have endured assault, bullying, incarceration, and discrimination, in some cases contemplating suicide. Through it all, they've survived.
I was born addicted to heroin. My mom had left me with her boyfriend, and that when I was only 3, that I was sexually assaulted.
I wrote a goodbye note when I was 7 years old. I was homeless for about 3 years of my life, and it was sad. I was being bullied in school as well.
I heard the whispers behind me. It was hard to walk down the hallways alone. I did it all day, every day. I live with depression, anxiety, and obsessive-compulsive disorder.
As a transgender person, I've experienced anxiety because society has tried to make me someone I'm not. I always felt like a blue crayon wrapped in red paper.
Stigma is killing us.
We're here to tell our stories.
We're here to end the silence around mental health.
We're here to fight for you.
We're here
To tell you
that you're not alone.
On a 2017 state survey, about 1 in 50 students identify as transgender, and it was more common among younger students.
In 2017, 1,772 children under the age of 18 died by suicide in our country.
I hope that we take different approaches towards kids that struggle with mental illness and depression, and take a better look at what they're going through.
As hard as it feels to think that you're alone in all of this, you're not alone, and there's always somebody else that feels the same way as you, and you might not know that person, but I can tell you that you're not alone in any of your mental health struggles.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kathy Merritt, CPB's Senior Vice President of Journalism and Radio.
Thank you. One of the great privileges of public media is telling the stories of people in our communities. It's also one of the great responsibilities of public media. When we listen to our communities, we can use our resources to respond, to facilitate, to connect, and as Pat Harrison said earlier, to seek solutions. Capital Public Radio in Sacramento and Milwaukee PBS have done just that. They identified a topic that isn't often talked about: suicide and mental health. And as you've just seen in the clip from the NewsHour, they've addressed the topic with authenticity and integrity. Through their work, they've developed new partnerships, reached out to new audiences, and demonstrated the vital role that public media plays. To tell us more about their efforts, please welcome Bohdan, Zachary, General Manager of Milwaukee PBS, Milwaukee's Journal Sentinel reporter Rory Linnane, and Capital Public Radio Chief Content Officer Joe Barr.
Good afternoon. I'm Bohdan Zachary. I'm very privileged to be here with wonderful colleagues. I'd like to thank CPB, Kathy Merritt, Pat Harrison for helping us understand that what we were doing individually resonates amongst all of us, because this is happening across the country. So we're delighted to be here to talk about what we did, how we got here, and what we hope we're accomplishing with the projects that we produced. Before we talk about Kids in Crisis, which we did in partnership with the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, I'd like to start with Joe Barr of Capital Public Radio to talk about how you walked into this topic, and also how do you approach the community, which is very tight-knit and small, to open up and be so honest.
Yeah, this was a really gratifying process and project for us at Capitol Public Radio, and I'm so humbled and gratified to be here and to have connected with Bohdan and to see the work that you're doing, which is really impressive. And this may lead to us doing something together down the road, which is what we want to be doing more of, collaboration. This really, as we know, the suicide and mental health is a very personal topic, and this, for us, came out of a very personal place. Our managing editor, Linnane Edmeyer, lives in Amador County, which is near Sacramento, population of 37,000 people. That's about the size of a college campus. It's a close-knit region. People know each other. They've grown up together. And there aren't a lot of outsiders who come into that area. Linnea was aware of people committing suicide and that was an issue in the community, but it was one that wasn't being talked about. And so she had that in the back of her mind as something that we should be reporting on. And then at the same time, our healthcare reporter, Sammy Cayola, was part of a fellowship, a healthcare journalism fellowship at USC. She was looking for a project, something with impact. And Linnea and Sammy came together and realized this was a topic that we should cover. As the importance of the topic really emerged very quickly, we realized that Cap Radio should be devoting more resources to covering it and to making it much bigger than just a story that a reporter would go into the community and cover this topic. So we brought in our community engagement strategist, Jessica Maria Ross. The three of them, that's really where all of this started. And it went from what was originally just a basic story into a whole 6-month-long community process. And it was just really amazing and gratifying to me to see how our team brought the community along with them. And there are a lot of challenges to going into rural America for city-based news organizations. They don't know us quite often. They don't trust us. And as I mentioned, Amador County is very close-knit. So we needed to have an ambassador to help us tell our story and to work with the people in the community. Well, that was Linnea Edmeyer, who lives there. She was really the key. And it just highlights the fact that when you're reporting on stories from rural parts of America, you need that person who's going to kind of open the door as a trusted person. And that's led to all kinds of other conversations about how we cover rural California. And from there, it was a process of developing contacts in the community. We partnered with Amador Mental Health Services and other people in the community and created a whole process that included convenings, included having our reporter go on the local radio station in town to talk about our project, what we were doing, how we wanted to get people involved. And she wrote an op-ed that appeared in the local newspaper. So these were all points along the way that garnered buy-in and support in different ways and then got people talking. And that was the most important thing, was this is such a difficult topic. People don't want to talk about it. That's the big issue. And our challenge was to get people to feel safe and to open up to us, not only in a group convening, but in a podcast, on the radio, very publicly. And it's an extraordinary thing for anybody to do that. And I think you found some similar challenges.
I moved to Milwaukee 4 years ago to take the job at Milwaukee PBS, and it was in awe of the series called Kids in Crisis, written by Rory Linnane, appearing in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and chronicling the stories of families who had lost their young ones to suicide. Just touched me, and so I was absolutely delighted to discover that one day our producers, Marianne Lazarski and Scotty Myers, said, guess what, Rory has come to us. So I'd love you to tell us how you got into this topic and how you wound up at Milwaukee PBS.
Sure, yeah, it's actually a really similar trajectory to what you just shared, Joe. We had noticed around Wisconsin teen suicide rates going up, and so we wanted to look into that. And as we did so, we just saw so much more attention than we ever expected coming to that topic, and there was such an appetite for content on that subject, especially because in media, that suicide especially has been something we've kind of as an industry been scared to talk about for a long time. But people really wanted to talk about it. And so I reported on it over the course of several years, and we started building events out of that. And we did storytelling events, we did suicide prevention trainings and panels. And as part of that, we also partnered with some local mental health organizations to make sure we had a lot of supportive resources and counselors on hand at those events. And then we kept getting requests from all over the state and beyond from people asking for us to bring our events to them, and we just didn't have the capacity to bring our events everywhere. So we had the idea of putting together some kind of documentary and toolkit so that more communities would be able to then use those resources to do their own events. And we came to PBS, who was the perfect partner because they're an organization that we really trust to take on this subject with the sensitivity that it really requires.
Well, what's really fantastic in working with Rory is that we made a deliberate editorial decision early on to not do this in what could have been a traditional way with the voiceover, the voice of God telling you the statistics, how it works, what's happening. And Rory had found 4 amazing youth who were so honest and transparent that we decided to let their stories drive the half hour. We chose a half-hour format. We decided that on May 16th, when we premiered the film, we would also do a half-hour live after the broadcast premiere, and we would have mental health experts, which we did. We had Barrett Poetker's parents talk about what it's like for a family to have to live through this, and Rory was part of this. What we also did, as you notice, there's a slightly different style. We shot it on DSLR, and then what we also did that I think also has been terrific is I went to the USA Today folks and asked them if they would ask their papers to stream it, and they said, yes, we will. So we had over 70 USA Today websites throughout Wisconsin and nationally air it. And then I have to give credit to Joe Barr and Capital Public Radio because we modeled our toolkit on what Capital Public Radio had done. We put video shorts into it, resources to suicide prevention organizations, and to date, we have had, I think as of last night I got the word, it was 205 requests for DVDs from nonprofits, churches across the country.
A lot of schools. A
lot of schools who want to get DVDs because they want to have workshops and town halls to discuss this issue publicly. So
I think that the toolkit is one of the unique things that we have both done, and that it's extended the impact. And that was a really important part of how this project was designed by my team. And the impact that we've seen from it is a little different and yet just as important. Amador County is a small community, but they are using this toolkit to have conversations. They've told us that. So it may not be distributed to 200 organizations, and congratulations, by the way. But for Amador County, this has been a game changer. They now have tools and a structure and an environment to have these conversations. And so the mental health officials that we worked with in the county said that it was a complete game changer for them. People are actually talking about mental health and suicide when it was pushed under the rug, typically, with people in the community. And now they have a common language and that tool that they can use to have conversations. So that was, I think, something that we're taking forward. We've done these before for other projects, but the impact that it had in this particular project was especially significant.
If I could just bring up one quick thing that all of you should understand is that when we have time and we're able to fundraise for a specific project, that's fantastic. And many of you are in those areas that are so critical to getting our projects done. I can speak on behalf of Joe and Milwaukee PBS because we've had this conversation. We didn't have funding. We didn't have discrete funding for either of our projects. We just knew that this was the moment we had to jump when we had the opportunity because we knew the stories were really, really that important. And so now we have sort of proof of performance that as we want to continue these stories in different ways, we can now go back to foundations and major donors and say, this is what we've done. With your help, we can make this go even further.
I do have to say, when Bohdan and I first talked, I was actually gratified to hear that he didn't have funding for his project either. So I wasn't alone in that. But it really, we've had some good conversations, and I think for me, the issue it raises is just how we're funding these kinds of important projects, because Bohdan and I didn't have any options other than finding internal money, because we knew that these were such important topics that we had to do it. So we found the money. And I just wonder how many other news organizations have been in a similar situation and decided not to do something. And so I would hope that we could find some way to change funding mechanisms so that when these story opportunities rise up, as they have organically, and then you realize, boy, this is something we have to do, but it's not in the time frame of the traditional funding cycle. You don't have a year to try and get the money. This came about for us very quickly. I wish that we could find some opportunities to create money for these sorts of projects in a much more short-term way.
You have a clip that...
I do. Thank you for reminding me of that. There's a very short clip just to play for you from our project, and this is a young woman who tried to kill herself, and I'll tell you more after we listen to the clip.
And so that was like my little breaking point. It had been boiling for like a few months, and then it just like kind of exploded. And I remember always feeling like it was like you were trapped like in the school cycle, because you have to go to school for anything. Then I didn't see other solutions, so instead I was just like, you know what, okay. And then I did that. And that sucked.
So that's 15-year-old Liz Larson, who's a high school student in Amador County. And she exemplifies a lot of kids in rural America, very disconnected, very alone. It's a different lifestyle in rural parts of America where everything is much more disconnected and far apart. There aren't the mental health services that people have in urban locations. She felt very alone, and she's one of many in rural America. The suicide rate for young people in rural America between the ages of 10 and 20 is double the suicide rates for urban areas, because they don't have the mental health support that is available in other places, and the conversations aren't happening. So Liz, again, I get back to the bravery it takes for people to come forward and talk to us, and she was one of many people from Amador County who talked about their personal situations. Liz was one of them. We talked to people, the challenge of being elderly people in rural areas are very alone, very disconnected. They have a story to tell. And so it's also hearing from people who you wouldn't normally hear from, talking about something that's so personal. So that was just one example of the 4-part podcast that we created, feature stories that ran locally on Morning Edition, one that aired nationally on Morning Edition, and then the whole digital component to what we did, where you can go to capradio.org and check out all the other the toolkit, all the other things that we created as part of this project. And I'd also mention on your table is a blueprint that we used that was the process that our team created to make all of this happen. So it kind of gives you an idea of how we structured it and what we did as part of that structure. On the other side of that page is basic do's and don'ts for covering suicide. And I hope that everybody here who is in editorial capacity in a newsroom will now think about covering this topic.
And just to expand on that, there are a lot of important things to avoid doing so that you can avoid possibly triggering something or having there be suicide contagion. On the flip side, there's this positive contagion effect called the Papageno effect, where Studies have shown that if you share stories of survivors, people who've thought about suicide but then decided not to, you have a ripple effect of people then seeking help, and so there can be positive impacts when you tell the stories the right way.
Were you thinking about that as you were doing your reporting? How much of a part did it play in your mind as you were reporting?
Definitely, and that's why we decided to center the stories of 4 resilient young people in our film who are all doing really well now and have been really brave and resilient. So. We're actually going to bring 2 of them up on stage. We will be bringing up Barrett and Alex. And before they come up, we will be playing a clip so you can see some of the impact that their stories have had.
Hi. Writing books and sewing doesn't exactly get you cool points or friends at my age. I started my company because I felt like bow ties were my superpower. I had a very low self-esteem, but bow ties gave me confidence. It was a way I could speak without speaking.
I'm like amazed of the courage that you guys have to be where you are. And I was just kind of wondering how long it took for you to get to that point from when you felt like you were kind of at your worst point.
It just started with me being able to tell a small group of people, and then that small group of people kept building, and I kept telling more small groups of people, and it made big groups of people, and then eventually I just feel comfortable enough being able to talk to everybody.
For me to be able to say that, Barrett is sitting here in front of you, and it was a long time, and it was so worth it now that I can look back on it and see where she is and who she is, and that she can sit in front of you guys that she was just a couple years ago and say, this sucks, but here I am, and I am bigger and I am braver, and every time I hang up the phone with her, I say, be the storm, baby girl. You don't stand in that rain. You need to be the storm.
Thanks to you both so much for being here with us today. So watching the clip back, what kind of memories does that bring up for you both? Alex, starting with you.
It brings back a lot of hurt, because when you're being bullied, it's difficult as it is. But when you're being bullied for something that you can't control, it's even more difficult. I am autistic, and I can't change that. I can't change that I love to learn, and I couldn't change that I was homeless. I tried to be somebody that I wasn't every single day. I tried to hide who I was, and it was as taxing as being bullied and assaulted.
Yeah. And how was the experience of sharing your story with the students at Rufus King? How did it feel to be able to share that and then see the reaction from the students there?
It made me feel good about myself, because it let me know that I'm not the only one, that I could potentially help other people get through their tough time by me telling my story.
Yeah, that's awesome. Barrett, how about you?
Mine's kind of similar to Alex. So I always was super anxious about being able to share my story, because I remember going back after the first time I did, and all the girls at school were, after they found out, that I had taken medication, that I did see a therapist, that kind of thing, they're like, oh, she's crazy. So it just kind of made everything worse, and just kind of made everything just to a point where I couldn't really take it anymore. And so I either decided, all right, I contemplated suicide. I thought, okay, I could be done right now, or I could use this to help other people that know exactly what I was feeling like. And so being able to go and talk to Rufus King kids was amazing, to be able to see how my work and everything I've done, and every hard time I've had to get up there and tell my story, being able to see that impact just on that small group of kids, but how much it really impacted them was super important to me.
Definitely.
I remember we did a screening 3 days before we premiered, May 13th at Pius High School, and we had 500 people packed, standing room only, and our half-hour Q&A after the screening turned into over an hour, because people just could not stand up and leave. They just wanted to keep asking questions. And you were all both so forthcoming about your experiences. And even now, because they've been on TV and the film is on YouTube and it's on USA Today websites and all of that, they're now getting responses. So I'd love you to talk about what it's like to now be hearing from other youth who are asking you for help.
So I've actually, since the documentary, I've actually been receiving emails all throughout the US and messages all throughout my social media. And people are, in their own, like, very positive. People are telling me, like, I'm being bullied and how could I get through this? And people are even saying, like, thank you for sharing your story. I am stronger now because of you. And to me, that's just absolutely amazing and heartwarming. And I make sure that I reply to every single person that reaches out to me, because it's a big responsibility. And on my new website, I added 2 new landing pages on my new website.
What's the web address?
It's www.buildabowbyalex.com.
Great.
And basically, one of the landing pages it's a bunch of contact info for people, and it's meant for people that are going through bullying or a mental health crisis. And the other one is my address, which people can, like, send me mail and stuff.
And Barrett, you've been getting responses?
Yeah, so after the premiere, I made an Instagram page. It's bbp.the.change. And so I made that, and I got a ton of Instagram messages because in the original film, my my username was on there. And so a lot of people reached out to me using that. And I've gotten a lot of messages. I've gotten some from saying, you've made me stronger. Thank you for doing this. You know, I've got a couple that said, you saved me, which is crazy because I never thought that I would be able to get those messages from someone. And I've also been very careful about whenever somebody says, you know, I'm struggling, like, what did you do? I need help. I always make sure to say, you know, this is what helped me. This is how I got through this, but I'm also not a professional. And I make sure to give the professional helpline numbers and text lines and crisis lines and all those things to really make sure that they get the most help that they can get for their situation. But I have gotten a lot of positive outreach, and I feel like I've helped change a lot of lives, which I never expected, but it's pretty amazing.
And both of you have, and just in case you didn't notice, this bow tie, and he's been, so this is Alex's bow tie. And Carrie, his mom, and Alex gave it to me yesterday in the lobby, and the only problem was it's a tie bow tie, and I'm awful at that. So and even today, he's been giving me a hassle because he says, I'm moving, so it's not right, so.
And it still isn't.
So, Joe, tell us, so what is next for you and your project as you move forward?
Well, I think most immediately I want a bow tie. That's the very next thing.
I'll be sure to give you my contact information.
I will be ordering. Please remember me when you're a billionaire.
I definitely will.
So what's next? I think for us, and you mentioned this earlier, we have a track record of success. We didn't have the funding for this, but we can take this to funders in the future and show them the track record that we have. And I also don't want to lose the momentum that was created with this project, examining this topic, having the connections that we've made. I don't want to lose all of the things that came together for us. And so we're looking at ways to continue the coverage of mental health and suicide in rural California. A lot of people don't realize that California is mostly red with blue dots. It is a state that has a lot of rural areas that just don't get covered, and it's very difficult logistically even to get out into these areas. Our reporters who were going into Amador County would come back and talk about how they got stuck behind tractors getting to where they were going. This was all new to them. But we need to be in rural parts of the United States in more significant ways. And so I think that's one of our next steps, is really just building on what we've done here.
Thank you.
We want to touch on what's next for you two as well. Yeah, Alex, you just got some really exciting news.
Yeah.
Share a bit about that.
Yeah, totally. So,
This is big news. This is big news. It was in the papers last week.
So what's next for me is I actually just received a scholarship for the entirety of my life from Cardinals Church University. So that's pretty amazing.
And what do you hope to study?
And I was just like really surprised. I was like what's going on right now? My body just went numb. And now I am going to go to school and become a pediatrician and a biochemist because I want to help children and also help find a cure for incurable diseases. So that's pretty awesome for me. Business-wise though, business is going pretty good. This is my third year of business. Make sure you all purchase a bow tie. I'll give you all my contact information, by the way. So yeah, get yourself some bow tie.
Perfect. And Barrett, how about you?
For me, I work in our counseling services at my college. I started a group in my high school that is still ongoing. And then I work for the counseling services at my school for peer outreach and peer-to-peer contact and that kind of thing. And I have been pushing a lot of positive social media through that because I was pretty bullied through social media. Now I've changed it from something I used to hate to something that makes other people happy, and I think that's really important. And I just really want to be able to share my story to as many people as possible, and just to be able to let people know that they're just not alone in any of their struggles.
Yeah.
I also want to say that me and my parents are also opening a school. We recently purchased a building, and we're going to name it Hustle and Heart. It's an entrepreneur school, and we will be a village of support for children that are striving to become leaders and entrepreneurs within their community, but they don't have the support to do so. So we will be their village of support.
That's great. Can't wait to see everything you both do.
We are all slackers compared to you.
Yeah.
That's the takeaway.
So one of the things, we could keep talking, and we're going to be around, so we're happy to talk to you and tell you that you can do this too. You need to do this. These are stories we have to tell of our communities. I always feel strongly that we reflect the communities that we serve, and that there are remarkable people doing spectacular things that we don't know about until we let them tell their stories. And here are two of them who did that. So I'd like to say thank you again to CPB for inviting us. Please, we'll be around to talk to you afterwards. And thank you, Kathy Merritt, for supporting our effort.
Well, and let's all say thank you, please, to Bohdan, Alex, Rory, Barrett, and Joe. What a remarkable panel, and especially these two young people. Just amazing. Thank you for all of the work you've done. And I don't know what else to say to cap off this amazing panel, but we also have more information. Stay tuned for more information about the Major Giving Academy. Joyce McDonald, I know, will be putting information out as soon as we can, but probably that'll start in the fall, so stay tuned around that and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.